All right, we are moving on to cell respiration and photosynthesis. All right, so you've talked about cells, we've talked about DNA, we've done all that stuff. So now what we need to do is exactly see how these organisms are getting their energy. So this is going to be through cellular respiration and photosynthesis. All right, so energy is necessary for life. So in order for things to grow, keep living, they need to have energy production in order for all those complex processes to keep happening. So we have energy that supports life on Earth. It's going to be captured through the sun's rays. So basically all of our energy is coming from the sun. And this is going to be captured in the organisms on Earth through photosynthesis. So all of our plants and algae and other things that can undergo photosynthesis, they're actually the organisms that are getting the energy from space and putting it for our use. Okay, so these two processes combined, so photosynthesis and cell respiration, are all going to provide organisms with energy, and all of it's coming from the sun. So basically what happens is we have photosynthesis. They're capturing the energy from the sunlight, and it is going to make glucose, which is a sugar, and oxygen. And basically what the plants use is carbon dioxide and water along with the energy from the sunlight. We, on the other hand, since we can't do photosynthesis, we are going to do basically the opposite. So we're going to take that sugar and oxygen that the plants produced, so we're going to eat the plants or another organism and use the oxygen that the plants let off to make our form of energy, which we're going to call ATP, and release carbon dioxide and water. So if you haven't noticed yet, these two processes are connected. So photosynthesis is going to produce our organic molecules, or glucose, the sugar, and oxygen so that we can use it and give them back carbon dioxide and water. Plants also, when we get to photosynthesis, they also do cellular respiration themselves. So they basically eat their own energy that they produce, or their own food that they produce. All right, so when we're talking about cellular respiration, this is the equation that's going to look like. So we have one molecule of glucose is going to be combined with 6 molecules of oxygen. So our bodies are going to then put those into the cells, and they are going to end up producing carbon dioxide, water, and lots of energy. So this is our key part right here. This is how our cells are going to keep going, and this is how we convert our food into useful energy to live. Okay, so when you're breathing, you know that you breathe in oxygen, you breathe out CO2. So that CO2 that you are breathing out is actually what's coming from cell respiration. So the products of cell respiration is carbon dioxide. We don't want that build up in our cells because it'll kill them. So we're going to breathe that out and get rid of that. So we're taking oxygen in as one of the inputs in for cellular respiration and breathing out one of the outputs. Okay, so what is cell respiration? So this is what's called an exergonic process. This means it releases energy. All right, so we are going to transfer energy from glucose that we eat into our molecule of ATP, which is what our cells use for energy. When we eat or take in one glucose molecule, this is going to give us 38 molecules of ATP. So from one thing, we are getting a ton of energy for cells to use. We can also use other organic molecules for energy also, but the one we're talking about mainly right now is our sugar, glucose. All right, so what is ATP? ATP is, in long terms, adenosine triphosphate. And what this means, it's an adenosine molecule with triphosphate. So there's 3 phosphate molecules right here. Without getting too much into the chemistry, basically what happens is ATP is our way to store energy. So we make these ATP molecules from our glucose, and every time our cell needs energy, it is going to come in here and break this bond to take one phosphate off. And when you break this bond, any chemical bonds that you break release energy. So that's how our cells are going to harvest the energy that they're storing from the food we take in. Okay, so we have a couple different stages of cellular respiration. The main parts that I want you to take out of are what energy is coming out and how electrons are moving. And the electrons are going to be important for us making ATP. Okay, so don't get caught up as much in the molecules because it is a little bit more complicated. All right, so we're just going to look at energy. So we want to look at energy and electron movement. Okay, so our first stage is glycolysis. So glycolysis, glucose, this is what's happening here. So what we're going to do is we're taking in one glucose molecule, and we're going to break it. It contains 6 carbons. And what we're going to do is we're just going to break it in half into what we call pyruvate. Okay, this is occurring in the cytoplasm. You do need to know the locations of where these are occurring. This one is in the cytoplasm. So if you look over here, we have something called NADH over here, and what these are is these are going to carry electrons. All right, so as this molecule is breaking down, there's a lot of missing organic chemistry in here, but as we break this down, it's going to grab some electrons and take them to the electron transport chain, which is later on in this step. So these are electron carriers. All right, and if you also notice, we get 2 molecules of ATP on each side and up here too. So we're getting ATP out of here, and we're getting an electron carrier to use later on down the road. So the glucose was converted into 2 pyruvates, and those 2 NAD pluses are going to make NADH and our 2 ATP. Okay, this step does not use oxygen. We'll talk about that later. All right. So our second step, this is called the citric acid cycle, or usually called the Krebs cycle. We're going to take those 2 pyruvate molecules, which were the 3 carbon chains, the half of glucose, and it's going to break it down into carbon dioxide. So we're basically going to break this 3 carbon molecule into 1 carbon molecules. And we're also going to give more electrons via NADH again. All right, and since we broke down the 1 glucose into 2 pyruvates, we're going to go through the cycle twice for 1 glucose, okay, since we have 2 molecules that came from it. And this is going to occur in the mitochondria. So if you remember, mitochondria was our powerhouse of the cell and where the energy is coming from. This is the energy you were talking about earlier in October. Okay, so what's going to come out of the Krebs cycle? We are going to get carbon dioxide, and this is per turn. Remember, we go through twice. We're going to get 3 more electron carriers, and we're going to get another one that's called FADH2, which is another electron carrier. So we're getting 4 electrons carried away, 2 carbon dioxide molecules, and 1 ATP. Okay, if you notice, since we said 38 ATP were at the beginning, we haven't really gotten to the big part yet. Okay, so here's just an overview of the Krebs cycle. So here is our electron carriers over here and here. We have carbon dioxide coming off here and here. And we have our ever important ADP coming off here. Okay, so these are our important things. We have carbon dioxide, electron carriers, and ATP coming out of this cycle. All right, our last stage. This is called oxidative phosphorylation. So if you remember, ATP had those phosphate molecules on them. So we're going to, oxidative means using oxygen, and we're going to use and add phosphates to make ATP. All right, this is where we're going to use all of our electrons that we had earlier, and then we're going to generate our ATP. And this is again occurring in the mitochondria because it is the powerhouse of our cell. And this is the power. All right, so this is what it looks like. We have our NADHs, which is what our electron transporters were, and our FADH2. Do not worry about the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s in this area. It's not as important. So what's basically happening is our electron carriers are coming in, dropping off electrons, and these electrons are flowing through here so we can pump hydrogen ions into the membrane. All right. What's going to happen is all of these hydrogen ions are going to go through an enzyme called ATP synthase, and these are going to drive this enzyme to work. And so we need to have all of these molecules here to run this enzyme so that we can make our ATP. Okay. So electron transport chain is pumping those hydrogen ions into that area that had a lot of hydrogen ions already. So it's going against the gradient. What this is going to do is increase potential energy, and that's the energy we're using to make the ATP. And then they're going to flow through the ATP synthase, and that's how we get our ATP. Okay, so the electron transport chain, this is the one we're getting 34 ATP from. So all those electrons were coming in from here and here, here and here, into here to make our big amount of energy. This is why the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Almost all of your energy in your cell comes from there. So just as a review, we had our glycolysis, which broke our glucose into half, into 2 pyruvates. And what we got off of there, we got 2 ATP. So we got some energy, and we got 2 electron carriers. Then we went into the Krebs cycle through this way. Remember, we got some carbon dioxide off of there, which is one of our alt products. We had a little bit of an electron carrier coming out, and then the Krebs cycle made 2 more molecules of ATP, because remember, it turns twice. And then this is where all of our electrons are coming off so that we can use it for the electron transport chain, which pumped hydrogen ions in so that we got ATP out. So energy, energy, energy via sugar and electron carriers. All right, and then we release carbon dioxide as a waste product, and we do get water coming out of our electron transport chain also from the hydrogen ion pumps. And that is cellular respiration in a very big nutshell.